Hello everyone, I'm Andrea, aka Mrs. C, and today I'm going to teach you all about Day of the Dead, how to draw a skull in celebration of Day of the Dead, and also about symmetry. Now first, what is Day of the Dead, also known as Dia de los Muertos? It's a celebration that takes place from November 1st to November 2nd. The Day of the Dead, it's a holiday celebrating deceased loved ones. This is when folks, they honor their loved ones. They create ofrendas or altars that have pictures and objects that honor their deceased loved ones. Now, in my family also, when ofrendas are created, we put pictures of our deceased loved ones, and that includes relatives, grandparents, and even animals, and then we leave some of the things that they loved in art. My grandpa, he had this hat that he always loved to wear, and my mom puts that on the ofrenda because she got that after he passed away. It's not just something that's celebrated at home. There are countries and cities that will have parades and parties, and they'll also decorate graves with special flowers and pan dulce. If any of you have ever had pan dulce or have not, it's Mexican sweetbread. It's amazing, so I recommend that. Now, Day of the Dead is said to have been started in the early 1500s. This is a holiday that Spanish invaders brought to Mexico. Now, when Mexicans started to celebrate this holiday and they wanted to create skull decorations to adorn altars and graves, they didn't have gold or fancy materials to make these decorations. However, they had a lot of sugar, and they used this to create beautiful sugar skulls that would decorate altars and graves. What we're going to be doing today is skull art inspired by Dia de los Muertos, and it's going to be symmetrical images. Now, for those of you who don't know what symmetrical images are or what symmetry is, that's when an image looks the exact same on both sides. So both sides are mirror reflections of each other. Now, butterflies, they are symmetrical because they're two wings that perfectly reflect each other. And then also the image of a heart, that is also perfectly symmetrical because it's the same shape and color on both sides. To my third graders who are doing this, or anyone who wants to do this art project at home, you will need an 8-inch by 5.5-inch sheet of white paper. You will need an 8 by 11-inch sheet of black paper or cardstock, depending on how sturdy you want the background of your skull art to be. You'll need a pencil, an eraser, scissors, Sharpies, colorful Sharpies, or some other coloring supply. You need glue sticks, colorful scrap paper in case you want to cut and add more details like what I did, and possibly a hole punch. You'll see what I use that for in a bit. Now let's gather these supplies, find a comfortable place to work, and let's get started. First, take your small white piece of paper and fold it in half, hot dog style. We want to draw half of our skull, so to do that first, let's draw the round part of the skull. I used a sanitizing wipe container, but if you have something else like a bowl or a large mug, you can do that. Make sure that your round object that you're tracing is right in the middle of your paper. But please don't draw on the other side, just draw on the left side or whichever side you choose, because we are just starting with half of what we want to create. Be sure to press lightly with your paper so you can erase any mistakes. Now I'm going to draw the jaw for my skull by drawing what looks kind of like a square. However, when I get to the bottom part of the jaw, I'm going to make it curved instead of perfectly pointed, as most squares would be. Next, I added a little more cheekbone. It's okay if you don't want to do that, but because I wanted the cheekbones to be a little more pronounced, I drew an extra curved line, and then I erased the circle inside of my skull. Now, I'm going to draw half of an upside down heart by drawing a J that looks like it's pressed against the middle of my skull. Then I'm going to draw a smile or half of a curved line to start the teeth. And then what I did was I drew 1, 2, 3 tall rainbow lines at the top. And then I drew 1, 2, 3 U-shaped lines that lined up with those rainbow lines to make the bottom and top rows of the teeth. Next, I'm going to draw circles where the eye cavities would be. Of course, these are going to be hollow, so you're going to think of some fun details to put inside of the eye openings. You can also use pictures online for reference, but what I love to do when drawing sugar skull art is draw flowers around the eyes or the flower petals, and I just drew some curved lines that kind of look like parentheses that were pushed together at the top to make flower petals. Next, I'm just going to draw some spirals on the cheekbones. To my students, you don't have to do every single thing that I do. However, it needs to be some really good details that you add. What I drew down here, I drew a J that was kind of upside down and pressed against the middle along with a leaf. And then I'm going to draw some wiggly lines to make what looks like fire that's on the chin for my skull. I just drew a bunch of wiggly lines that came up and down, not in a uniform manner, and then did the same inside. I decided to make my upside down heart nose have another layer to it, and then I drew some straight lines going through my petals. If I'm going a little too fast for you all, you can always ask your sub or your teacher who's playing this video for you to pause. Right now, you can just add whatever details you like. I added some polka dots along the sides of the forehead. Now I'm going to draw 2 halves of a circle, one inside the other, and some U's to make flower petals. This next thing I've seen in Mexican folk art where folks drew straight lines with U's coming out of it to make some really beautiful leaves. Next, here's what I did to make a rose. I drew a circle and I drew what looked like the letter Y, but with an extra line wrapped around the middle. And then I drew a little spiral, and that makes a really lovely flower. After that, I decided to add some U's all coming out from around the circle that I made there. I'm also going to add a couple of more spirals, and I think I'm pretty happy with my design. However, we need to make this other side of the skull. So what you're going to do is fold your paper in half and just start coloring on the back of the side that you drew on. Now, you might wonder, what are we doing? We're ruining it. Nope, take a look. As you color over the design you made, it's going to transfer onto the other side of your skull. You're going to keep doing that, and you can occasionally open up your paper to see what areas you might need to color over again or what areas you might have missed. So keep doing this until you have transferred the entire half of the skull that you drew onto the other side. Once you have finished with the transfer, you're going to take your pencil, resharpen it if you have to, and trace over everything that transferred on the other side, because it might not show up as well as it did on the side that you did draw on first. Once you have finished your sugar skull drawing, I want you to take a Sharpie and outline all the details that you made. And once you're done outlining everything with bold black Sharpie, you can add whatever colors you want to your sugar skull. But please keep in mind, we're looking for good craftsmanship. That means no scribbling, no empty spaces or cheese holes, unless it's a detail like maybe there's white petals or maybe there's white polka dots, but everything else needs to have nice solid color. Once you have finished coloring your sugar skull, take your scissors and carefully cut out your skulls. However, do not throw away your scrap white paper, because later on in this video, I'm going to draw some roses with leaves that I'm going to cut out and glue onto my black paper, and you might want this paper to draw, color, and cut out and add extra detail to your backgrounds for your skulls. Next, I took my glue stick and I put glue all over the back of my skull. Then once I flipped it over, put it in the middle, I used the side of my fist to really rub it on. I prefer it when my students rub on whatever it is they're gluing rather than hammering, because then that'll make everyone's ears ring. Next, I wanted to add some flowers using the scrap paper I had, so what I did was I made some football shapes by drawing 2 curved lines and pushing them together. Now, it's really up to you what shape and details you want for your leaves, but I just took my time and drew a couple of leaves that I wanted to put under the flowers I was going to make. Now, to make the football shape, imagine 2 parentheses and pushing them together. That's how you draw leaves. If you want to draw a classic flower, the letter U will be your best friend, but you're going to draw not 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but 5 U's that go into a circle. For this flower that I made, I just kept repeating what I told you and drew 5 U's that go in a circle to make 5 petals for a flower. I found it best that whatever leaves you wanted to add on, I glued under the flowers before I glued them down onto my paper. Please make sure that whatever it is you want to be glued down flat, you need to add glue under it. So if you want the leaves to not be loosey-goosey, make sure you put enough glue. Now, you don't have to do this, but what I did was I used my hole punch to punch out some little yellow circles to make pollen for my flower. Notice how not to waste all of that paper that I had here. I started on the very outside edge of my yellow paper and then started to punch the hole. So that way, if I wanted to make something bigger with the yellow paper, I have all the space in the middle. Now, make sure that you add glue first and then you press on the little holes that you punched out of the yellow paper. Otherwise, if you keep adding glue to the back of these teeny tiny circles, you're going to have very, very sticky fingers, so don't do that. Next, I decided to add more roses like the ones that I put inside the eyes for my skull. That's, as I explained earlier, drawing a circle with a letter Y in it that's kind of curved, but then I just added an extra line, and then in the little triangle I made with those lines, I made a spiral. I also made those leaves by drawing those 2 little parentheses that are pushed together, and then I drew a line down the middle. You can choose whatever colors you want if you're going to be using those roses in your background design. Then you're going to carefully cut them out, and then you're going to glue them onto your background. You don't have to. Another thing I did right here was I made some lightning bolts to add in the background. What I did was I drew what looks like a crooked letter Z, but I made it have an extra little point to it. Then I drew another crooked Z next to it.